We told you earlier, the U.S. Surgeon General is demanding Congress put a warning label on social media apps, similar to those on cigarettes and alcohol.
In an op-ed in the New York Times, Vivek Murthy cited social media as an important contributor to the ongoing mental health crisis amongst young people. Joining us now via Zoom is Birmingham psychiatrist Dr. Gerald Shiner. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
So there are so many benefits to social media, but we
Right.
hear often about some of the issues that are associated with using it too much, especially for young people. What are your thoughts on this proposal?
Well, social media is not good or bad. It has its good points, and it helps people stay in touch with one another. It helps us stay in touch with our friends who live out of town and keep abreast of what's going on. We can get some news. We have to be careful in how we take the news. But some people, young people, kids especially, can get obsessive. They can spend hours and hours on social media. When you're on social media, time stands still. And it cuts you off from real interactions with people, and it takes you into a world that can be part fantasy, makes you vulnerable to being phished or taken advantage of, or to rendezvous with someone who might kidnap you or have some desire to do you harm or exploit you. So we have to be careful. It's just hard to know how parents can intervene and what can really address the problematic part of it.
I agree. And as a parent, Dr. Shiner, I'm almost wondering, we know that kids don't always pay attention. What effect do you think a warning label is really going to have? Or are you thinking that it's more for the parents?
Well, it is more for the parents, but I think it reminds parents that they have a responsibility to keep an eye on what their kids are doing. You can't go on their sites. You can't see where they're browsing. You can't see what they're posting. You may see a little bit. If you snoop on them too much, they'll try to get around you. But a warning can make parents aware. It can let kids know that their parents are being notified and that they're watching. And again, I think a parent has to watch how much time a child spends on social media and how much it interferes with them doing their homework, seeing their friends face to face, getting out and getting exercise and getting fresh air. All those things our parents told us when we were little: time to go outside, time to get exercise. But if a kid's just putting his nose into his phone during mealtime, during free time, hiding in his bedroom, then you know that something's wrong and you have to take a look at what they're doing.
If social media use for young people goes unchecked and continues to be unsupervised, what are some of the potential dangers there?
Well, one is a kid can get withdrawn into fantasy and they can get preoccupied with things that aren't real or aren't realistic. Another thing is they can be bait for people who want to exploit them. And, we hear periodically about cases of kids who meet some older kid or an older adult who tries to exploit them and wants to meet them for intimacy or for sexual exploitation. That's how kids get trafficked. That's how kids get recruited into terrorist organizations. So those are the extreme dangers. But the real danger is you lose your social skills and you learn how to interact just by typing and by looking at pictures instead of talking to people in real time. I have adult children, and I'll ask them every once in a while, "Do you ever hear from so and so?" And my daughter might give me a whole rundown of, "Oh, she's living here, she's married, she has 2 kids. Oh, when's the last time you spoke to her?" Well, not since high school, but I see what she posts on Facebook and I know what she's doing. And when that becomes a substitute for human interaction, I think then you have a problem. You get a shy kid who gets withdrawn into fantasy and they're vulnerable to being exploited.
I know there's no hard, steadfast rule, but what's your opinion on the age for social media? When should parents start allowing some of that freedom online? And is there a time that you think is just too early?
Well, I think early adolescence kids are going to get interested in that. 11, 12, or 13, kids are going to be interested in social media. They're going to want to have a screen name. They're going to want to be able to interact with their friends. They're going to want to be able to post things. So it's a question of phasing it in, controlling. And when they're younger, you can control how much time they spend on their communication devices You can take their phone away during school time. You can make sure that they're not on the phone during dinner time, and that they have to spend more time with the family in the family room rather than being locked up in their room just with their nose buried in their phone. So I'd say early adolescence, between 10 and 12, depending on how mature the kid is. And all this has to do with the kind of kid that has access to a phone. Some kids can use it responsibly to communicate and to communicate in groups. But a kid who's shy, who doesn't have good social skills, and who's vulnerable, that they can be older, they can be 13, 14, or 15, and still be susceptible to the kind of exploitation that you can see on social media.
And lastly, quickly want to point out that these warnings could also apply to adults too, right?
Yeah.
Sure, there's some adults who have no life, or they're socially withdrawn, or they have social phobias, and these compensate them and take away any pressure they need to try to overcome those fears or overcome those limitations, or how to learn how to socialize. We withdraw and we live in a virtual world rather than a real world, and that's not healthy.
All right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Shiner, a psychiatrist from Birmingham, for joining us. We appreciate you. Thank you.